What if the most productive thing you did today was actually nothing at all? It appears that science says that a pause is not a gap in your day. It's actually the engine room. This is Peace Unplugged. And today we're asking, is rest the real health hack that nobody is marketing? It seems to me that we live in a culture that treats busyness as a badge of honour. But across neuroscience and aviation safety research and workplace psychology, the evidence keeps landing in the same place. Pause isn't a weakness in the system. It's actually a feature of it. So today, following some research, I'm going to share with you 5 case studies. Each one of these is a setup, followed by some tension and ending with a payoff. This will show exactly how, when, why, and how to take a break. Picture now a task that never changes, checking a screen for the same signal, minute after minute, and for the better part of an hour. Most of us assume that our focus just runs out, a bit like a fuel tank draining, But that's not quite what the data shows. Now here's my go at trying to pronounce some unusual names, so bear with me. In 2011, psychologists Astorani, Ariga, and Alejandro Lleras at the University of Illinois tested people on a repetitive computer task lasting 50 minutes. The lead researcher argued that for decades, scientists wrongly treated attention as a limited resource that simply gets used up over time, where in fact people start performing poorly because they've stopped paying attention, and that would be to the actual task itself. If that's true, the fix isn't just willpower, it's something else entirely. The study divided 84 participants into groups, and most people's performance declined over the task in hand. The goal habituation model proposed by Ariga and Lleras suggested it's possible to prevent the vigilance decrement, that's the decline in performance over time for task on task, simply by momentarily deactivating and then reactivating the task goal. In plain terms, there were 2 briefs. That's deliberate diversions, just a second long, that kept participants focused from ever sliding. The takeaway for anyone glued to a screen? A short-engineered interruption that's not a lapse of discipline. It is in fact what apparently keeps the discipline alive. Now this next part I recognise for myself. Every writer, songwriter, or podcaster knows this moment. It's starting with a blank page, simply sitting there waiting for ideas to come somewhere from here. So our instinct is to sit tight, think harder, push on through. But Stanford researchers, here we go again, Marily Oppezzo and Daniel Schwartz found that the opposite might be true. Across 4 experiments, they demonstrated that walking boosts creative ideation, both in real time and shortly afterwards. The study found that walking indoors or outdoors similarly boosted creative inspiration. The act of walking itself, not the surroundings or the environment, was the driving factor. It proved that creative levels consistently and significantly became higher for walkers than for those sitting still. Nearly all participants tested while walking generated more creative ideas than those that were seated. The pause in this case is not the stillness. It is in fact motion without an agenda. Step away from the desk and the desk problem solves itself. Not every break restores itself equally. We all know this, don't we? Scrolling your phone, that doom scrolling activity, can actually make you feel much more drained. Psychologists Rachel and Stephen Kaplan identified why in the attention restoration theory. Kaplan and Kaplan's theory holds that activities requiring sustained focus, studying, writing, screen work, bring on directed attention fatigue, which shows up as irritability and inability to concentrate. Boy, do I know that one. The question is, what actually reverses that? The research tells me that later, researchers Mark Berman and John Janides and Stephen Kaplan tested this directly. Participants took a 50-minute walk. That was either in a park or in a busy town. They then sat cognitive attention tests. The nature walk produced a significant improvement in directed attention and performance. The urban walk produced none, and it's thought that that's because the city demands attention of its own. That's from traffic, signage, and crowds. The Kaplans described the ingredients of a truly restorative environment as a sense of being immersed, an escape from routine, an effortless pull on attention they called soft fascination, and a fit between the person and the place. The lesson here is not just take a break, it's take the right kind of break. A break that asks nothing of you, rather than one that quietly asks for more. It's one of the reasons why, in previous podcasts I've made, where I take a walk across the seafront, looking out towards sea, I find it really refreshing, and it starts the creative mind juices. Set up in the 1990s, NASA faced a blunt safety problem. That was long-haul pilots who were flying fatigued, and we all know that fatigue kills. Again, the instinctive response is to push through, stay awake, stay vigilant. It turns out that was exactly the wrong one. Researcher Mark Rosekind and his team studied commercial flight crews on trans-Pacific routes, giving 12 pilots a planned 40-minute rest opportunity during the low workload cruise phase, while a colleague flew the plane, and comparing them against 9 pilots who received no such break. The rested pilots used the opportunity to sleep off 93% of the chances given, falling asleep in an average of just over 5.5 minutes and sleeping for close to 26 minutes, compared with the non-rest group. The short nap was linked to as much as 54% increase in alertness and 34% improvement in performance. That wasn't just rest indulgence. It was rest as engineering. It was a deliberately placed pause, and it states it was sized to the body's own sleep architecture that carried its benefit through to the most demanding part of the job, that was landing the aircraft. Now we know that not everybody can nap at their own desk or have the chance to go walk along a beach. Most of us are left with minutes break, not hours. And that was certainly my experience when I was at work. For many places that I worked, being caught actually doing nothing for even a minute or two was frowned upon. So the point here is, for good benefits, do those small pauses. You know, the sort of thing. Going to the kettle, standing in the corridor, 2 minutes at the window perhaps, by the drinks dispenser. Do these account for anything scientifically? A 2022 review of 22 studies found that taking micro breaks, stepping away from a task for 10 minutes or less, was generally associated with reduced fatigue and increased vigor. The analysis found statistically significant effects of micro breaks on boosting vigor and reducing fatigue, though the effect on overall task performance was smaller and only reliable for less demanding work. A further finding was that the longer break, the greater the performance. The honest verdict? Micro breaks won't rescue you from a genuinely depleting task, but for everyday fatigue, they are a real, measurable lever. Small, cheap, and available to almost everyone, almost immediately. So, 5 problems. 5 pauses, 5 ways the science answers back. The problem: focus erodes our repetitive tasks. The solution: build in brief, deliberate diversions, even for a few seconds, to reset the task goal before the vigilance decays. Problem 2: creative thinking stalls at the desk. The solution: go for a walk, indoors or outdoors, perhaps on a treadmill or down a towpath. The movement itself unlocks divergent thinking. Problem 3: screen-based breaks leave us more drained, not less. The solution: choose soft fascination environments, green space, the coastline, anywhere that asks nothing of your attention. The next problem: fatigue undermines performance in high-stakes work. The solution: a short planned nap of around 20 to 30 minutes. Believe me, I do this quite regularly. And I discovered, and its evidence shows, that 30 minutes rest can meaningfully restore attention and alertness. The next problem. There's no time for a proper break. The solution? Take the micro breaks anyway. 10 minutes or less, taken often. It reliably eases the fatigue and it lifts the vigor. And this is the smallest lever that most of us are not pulling. The pause, it turns out, isn't the interruption to the work. It's part of the work. Okay, so thank you for listening today. I'm now going to prepare for my little break, as I often do. This has been Peace Unplugged. Until next time, remember to take that break. Bye for now.